Hello, everybody. People are popping in right now. We'll wait till everybody is in to connect. Okay, well, good morning and welcome everybody to our January SEDAC meeting. We are live both on Zoom and streaming on YouTube. For new viewers that may be wondering what this is all about, a quick little bit of background. SEDAC is an advisory committee that contributes parents' voices and feedback to the work the district does through collaboration amongst parents, school sites, and district administration, helping to inform the development of practices to meet the needs of all learners, providing the community with insight into the special education process and broadening of awareness of available resources for our families. Our site representatives have a stake in the sharing of information with their school committees in order to foster district-wide connectedness. Now, before we move on to roll call, we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everybody could stand. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. Okay, with that, we are going to move on to roll call. So if Diana, you can move on to roll call, and people are still coming on in.
Good morning, everybody. And we will start with Balboa, representative and alternate. Buena, representative.
Here.
Good morning. Cabrillo, representative. And Citrus Glen, representative. And Data, representative. I saw her. Hi, good morning. The EIC representative. Elmhurst representative and alternate.
I'm here, Ashley.
Good morning, Ashley. I don't see the alternate. And then we will move on to Foothill representative. Good morning. J. Sarah representative. Good morning. Juana Maria representative.
She's trying to get in from the waiting room. And we do have somebody from Balboa here because I see a Balboa name.
Leslie or Sean?
Yes, Leslie. I just logged in.
Okay, I'll put you down. Good morning.
Good morning.
Juana Maria, you said she was in the waiting room. I'll count her down. Lemon Grove representative and alternate. And then we have
Linda Crockett's also coming in right now, if you miss her.
Okay, yeah, she's Juana Maria. Pierpont.
Hi, Kim Cabero.
Good morning. And Poinsettia, representative and alternate.
Good morning.
Good morning. Portola, representative.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sunset, representative and alternate.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning, I see Christy. Ventura, representative. Will Rogers, representative.
Good morning.
Good morning. And school board representative Sabrina Rodriguez. Okay, that's everybody.
All right, and I am Nick Vlahos, Interim Deputy Director for Special Education. Carrie, can you introduce yourself?
I am Carrie Newley, and I'm currently the Program Specialist for the Mild and Moderate Programs for Ventura Unified.
Thank you. And Diana, if you want to officially introduce who you are as you took roll call.
Yes, hi, I'm Diana, and I am the Senior Administrative Specialist here in the office. I work very close with Nick and Marcus and Carrie, and I'm here to assist anybody whenever you have a phone call. I'm at 11:23.
Okay. Well, thanks again for everybody coming. Happy Friday, going into the weekend strong here. We are going to do a couple presentations. The first one, I am going to go over an overview of the special education processes. And for the next few weeks, we're going to have our program specialists go over their programs within the district so we can get a full view of the types of services we offer students. And then after each presentation, we'll give some time for questions and comments. And again, after the second presentation, we'll do that too. And after that, we'll move on in our agenda. So we will have enough time, I believe, to have some very great discussion today on what we have going on in special education for Ventura Unified. So I am going to pull up my presentation and we're going to get started. So let me share the screen here. Okay, slideshow. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the presentation. Okay, thank you. So again, this is for our SEDAC meeting today, January 28th, 2022. So we are first going to review the Individuals with Disability Education Act. As you all know, it's IDEA or IDEA. So let's do this. I'm going to move some of you over a little bit. So IDEA is a federal law that requires school districts to provide a free, appropriate public education, also known as FAPE, to eligible children with disabilities. And a free, appropriate public education means that special education and related services are to be provided as described in an individualized education program. A lot of people call it an individualized education plan. That's fine also. And under public supervision to your child at no cost to you. So some general rights about IDEA. To be eligible for this program, a child must be evaluated and found to have one of the following disabilities and need special education or related services. So I want to bring that to light here. So not only must the child meet the criteria of one of those categories over there, but they also must need those services. So we have students that may meet the criteria for autism, but they may be excelling in school. They may have appropriate social relationships and communication skills. In that case, they might not actually need special education because they don't require those services. So we have something called the Child Find Mandate, and the Child Find requires school districts to identify, locate, and evaluate all children with disabilities, regardless of the severity of their disabilities. And this obligation to identify all children who may need special education services exists, even if the school is not providing special education services to a child. So we have a lot of practices in place where we're always on the lookout to determine if children are struggling and really, determining if we should go ahead with a special education evaluation and what types of services those children may need. So here are some of those processes. So if we have parent or teacher concerns, we could have a student support team or, those types of meetings where we discuss these concerns. We look at the cumulative files, response to intervention data, and as we're just navigating the campuses, if we see any concerns, if any other staff sees concerns, even outside of a teacher, we're always talking and looking and making sure that we are meeting this mandate. So what is the least restrictive environment, also known as LRE? IDEA further provides the states must have in place procedures assuring that to the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities, including children in public or private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children who are not disabled, and that special classes, separate schooling, or other removal of children with disabilities from the regular education environment occurs only when the nature of severity of the disability is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. In other words, it's a big paragraph. So what I'm trying to say here is that when we look at students, the goal is to get them as close as we can to be fully integrated into the general education environment. That's our goal, to where they can be successful. And if they're not able to be successful, if they're fully integrated in gen ed, then we'll provide some services. If they need additional services, that's how you go down the continuum of LRE. You can see I have a little chart there where it has least restrictive. So least restrictive, again, would be fully integrated into the general education environment with minimal or no supports with accommodations. And we can move all the way to most restrictive, which means potentially hospital or a residential institution. So we're very careful, and when we look at these things, we talk about them as a team in the meetings, and at that point, we will determine, based on all the data we've collected through the assessment process, observational data, and determining where we think students will meet the LRE requirement. So here's a quick guide to special education from beginning to end. So if you look at the top of that circle, reason for concern, it could be, there can be a multitude of concerns: behavioral, social, emotional, academic. When we're looking at special education, we're not only focused on academic. We understand that as a whole child, there are other factors, including medical reasons, behavior, social, emotional concerns. We look at all of those things. And a request for assessment might be made by a parent. And within 15 days, we would potentially most likely provide an assessment plan. And we give the parents time to look that over, but within 15 days, we would like to get that assessment plan back if possible. And once it's agreed upon to conduct the assessment, we typically have 60 days to complete the assessment. The only time we have more days than that is if we have a holiday or a break that's in excess of 5 days. So during winter break, the timeline would stop and it would continue on the other side of winter break. And again, we hold the IEP meeting within 60 days. And at that point, we develop goals and we look at services and accommodations to, as we discuss the needs of the child. And after that, we're looking at appropriate placement as a team. This isn't just based on one or two factors. There's many factors we look at as we determine placement and implementation. And we have reviews of IEPs annually. Brief overview of the assessment process, areas for consideration when we're conducting our assessments. We're looking at environmental, cultural, and economic concerns, educational history and the impact of that, health and developmental, and if we have EL, we look at the English language development. And because we have to look, when we're looking like a learning disability, we have to really take into consideration language. Types of assessment data that we look at are observational data, cognitive functioning processing, academic skills, work samples, communication and adaptive skills, social emotional functioning, and we're looking at parent-teacher, student interviews, and rating scales. And this isn't everything, but this covers most of the stuff we're looking at. So a quick walkthrough when a school psychologist, and in my heart, I'm a school psychologist. I'm currently serving as the interim deputy director of SPED, but my practice is school psychology. And just a quick walkthrough of an evaluation here. Again, parents have the right to initiate a referral of their child for special education services. If the district decides to assess, the parent shall be given the assessment plan within 15 days, as I expressed earlier. Now, for the assessment plan, we are looking at areas that we believe are necessary to conduct a full eval on your child. And that can be discussed when you receive an assessment plan, if you'd like to discuss that. And then in order for us to even conduct an assessment, we do have to have written permission from the parents. And testing and assessment materials and procedures for evaluation and placement of children with disabilities will be selected and administered so as to not be racially, culturally, or sexually discriminatory. In regards to assessment materials, the assessors will use the materials that are appropriate to determine the strengths, needs, and areas of weakness for the student. The assessment team, as I said earlier, has 60 calendar days to complete the assessment. not counting days between school sessions. And as a school psychologist, reviewing educational records, providing direct cognitive and processing assessments, conducting multiple observations in different settings, interviewing key stakeholders, providing rating skills that consider many aspects of social, emotional, and adaptive functioning, and reviewing the results from other assessors, providing the necessary data to complete a psycho-ed eval. Now, keep in mind when we're doing a multidisciplinary assessment, this also applies to occupational therapists when they're conducting their assessment, speech and language pathologists, and many other assessors. We all kind of follow the same guidelines when we are conducting those assessments. Again, eligibility considerations, we must look at this. This is where the IPD construct really comes into play. So the school members of the team have the necessary technical knowledge to transform great ideas into practice that works kids in the classroom. So when we're looking at criteria, there's a lot of different criteria. Again, as a school psychologist, from the eyes of the psychologist, we're looking at autism, specific learning disability, other health impairment, intellectual disabilities, and emotional disturbance. Now, when we're looking at autism in particular, for example, the speech and language pathologist is most likely involved, and so is the occupational therapist at times. For a specific learning disability, as this is one of the more common disability areas that students tend to qualify under, here's just some basic facts on it. Students exhibit a pattern of cognitive or processing strengths indicated by a pattern of abilities in the average or above average range. These are how we look at patterns of strengths and weaknesses, which is the model we use in Ventura Unified, and it's the model that Ventura County is using in general. Students exhibit both significant cognitive and academic weakness. So looking at a learning disability, the child would have a cognitive strength and also a cognitive weakness and an academic weakness. And then there would be a research-based link that would exist between the cognitive and academic weaknesses. And as I said earlier, the child must require special education to access the core curriculum. And this is just a quick overview. This is from 2018 and 19. I don't have the more current numbers, but as you can see, this shows in California what children are typically qualifying under. SLD, specific learning disability, we have the highest rate of qualification in the state. Speech or language impairment is also quite high. And as you go down, you can see some are not as, children don't necessarily qualify under everything at one time, but they could potentially qualify for one or two or even more at times of these eligibilities. So here's another little quick fact. Special education services were provided to almost 800,000 individuals, newborn through 22 years of age in the year of 2018-19. California provides specifically designed instruction at no cost to parents to meet the unique needs of children with disabilities. This instruction is provided in a variety of settings that allows infants and their families, preschoolers, students, and young adults to be educated with their peers as much as possible. That is the least restrictive environment. So yes, if you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to the special ed department at 641-5000, extension 1123. And in addition to that, you can always talk to your school sites, your administrators, school psychologists, or whoever you may be that you want to get in contact with. We'll do our best to communicate with you. So that is our general overview of special education in a nutshell. So do we have any questions or comments surrounding that? I know I kind of went through that quickly. Give it another minute.
Hi, Nick.
Yes.
I have a question. Christy from Sunset. You talked about child find and that, teachers are looking out for disabilities with their students as well. If they do, notice things with their kids, what's the next step for them? Who do they talk to?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So you're asking if a teacher specifically sees worry with a child, correct?
Yes.
So a lot of times they'll typically go to the principal, and and or the school psychologist. So usually the school psychologist and or principal are a first point of contact. And depending on how, severe the worry is, maybe it's more minor, maybe they're just not, performing exactly at grade level, but are right around there. Then we might put a student on, we might just look at the student. We might hold an SST with the parent to discuss these concerns. We can potentially look at, providing intervention for that child. But if there is an actual suspected disability, we would look at potentially doing a special education evaluation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, we're going to move on, and we are going to have Ms. Newley go over her presentation. Carrie?
Thank you. I'm going to pull up my shared screen. Give me just a moment. Alrighty. So first of all, I just wanted to say hello, and it's very nice to be back at SEDAC and see some familiar faces and also see so many new since the last time I was here. As I introduce myself, I'm currently serving as the program specialist for the mild to moderate program. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what that means in Ventura Unified at this time. Oh, if I can make my, you know what? Hello, sorry, I need to be on.
It looks good. It looks good like that, Carrie. Yep.
It does, but I'm thinking, there we go.
Okay.
All right, so overall, here is what we're going to be looking at. I'm going to give you a little bit of brief introduction, tell you who we do serve, and then tell you just briefly about our elementary programs and our secondary programs. All right. So first of all, what is a program specialist? Some of you may not know. So we have a team of program specialists and who oversee the different programs. First of all, my background. How did I become a program specialist? So this is my 30th year in the district. I spent 26 of those years serving as a speech language pathologist, which is a very common service that our students receive. And as an SLP, we have the unique ability to work with a variety of students. So in those 26 years, I had the ability to work with students all the way from age 3 up to high school and across disabilities, which gave me a really broad background of student needs that maybe a teacher may not get if they're teaching in one program or in one grade level. So that led me to, go into a more of a management administration role. And I served for 3 years as the assistant director of special education. And then this year I am overseeing the mild moderate programs specifically. And that was a great fit for me as well, because for many years I worked with the mild to moderate programs at Juana Maria Elementary School. The program specialists as a whole, we help create those conditions for the programs to support the student needs. We support teachers and staff in our programs by consulting with them, with the site teams. We provide professional development and office hours to both sites as a whole, teams as a whole, and individual teachers and providers who reach out to us. And we are that bridge between sites and the special education department. So if sites have a specific need or a specific concern or need specific support, they can reach out to their program specialist, and we're that bridge for them to reach the special education department. We also collaborate together when students enter Ventura Unified to identify the programs that a student needs if they come in with an IEP. And we also collaborate between our departments and with each other when teams may feel that a student needs a change of placement to a different program. So we always go in, we observe students, we consult, and we help the teams brainstorm about how to support the students. And then the other piece that I do on the mild moderate side is I collaborate with curriculum instruction so that I'm really connected with them as they are looking at district as a whole assessments for students and implementation of curriculum. Okay, I don't know why my PowerPoint, I'm sorry. So who do we serve? First of all of our work focuses on these cornerstones of special education: a lot of what Nick just talked about, the free and appropriate public education, the LRE, the least restrictive environment, that full continuum of program options he showed in his graph, and of course, the parent and student rights. One of the other interesting things about mild moderate programs is it spans much of that much of that continuum. So the mild moderate program includes not just special classes where students spend the majority of their day, but it includes our resource program, which may go from a simple consult collaboration of the special education teacher with the general education teachers to make sure that students' needs are being met, to pull out support, push in support for reading, math, whatever the students' needs are. So there is a very wide span of what encompasses the mild moderate program. And as such, I get to work with every school in the district because every school in the district offers resource level services. Our students also, by virtue of the fact that it can be as simple as consult collaboration and individual subject support, we do have students in the mild moderate programs who have all 13 categories, any of the 13 categories of which a student can be made eligible for special education. So that's kind of unique to the mild moderate programs as well. Overall, in Ventura Unified, we have about 1,600 students in grades TK through 12 plus who currently receive specialized academic instruction, which you might also see in other districts called specially designed instruction. Out of those 1,600 students, about 1,200 of them are in the mild moderate programs. So that's the majority of our students who have those SAI services on their IEPs. We do serve the whole grade level. And I say 12 plus because part of what students have the right to is services beyond 12th grade if they have not graduated with a high school diploma or turned 22. So occasionally we might have what we call a super senior who needs to come back beyond 12th grade to finish some credits and to graduate with their high school diploma in our mild moderate programs. Let's see. So what is specialized academic instruction or specially designed instruction? That is, and here's another little nice paragraph for you to read, but it is as adapting as appropriate to the needs of an eligible child, the content, methodology, or delivery of instruction to address those unique needs of this child that result from the child's disability and to ensure the access of the child to the general curriculum so that the child can meet educational standards within the jurisdiction of the public agency that apply to all children. So that's a fancy way of saying special education and specialized academic instruction is not necessarily a place that a child is. It's a way of teaching and a way of reaching those children's needs so that they can access that general education curriculum and that they can meet the same standards that are expected of all students. Our students in general are in the mild moderate programs are those with more mild to moderate disabilities, which makes sense. Our students may be struggling in reading and or math as a result of their disability, which then could affect their access to other subjects. So we all know that reading tends to be the basic of almost every subject we have. It feeds into every subject. So our students tend to struggle in one or more of those areas. Some of them also need behavioral interventions related to their disabilities, although behavior in itself would not be a reason that we are putting a child in a mild to moderate program. Our students may need supports beyond the intervention and supports available to all students. So that's where Nick was talking about that if a student is recommended because people have concerns about them, if we're not yet suspecting a disability, but we just feel this child needs intervention, we would give those children the intervention. But if they need supports beyond those interventions that are available to all students, that's when we would be suspecting that there's a disability and that we would make sure that we are assessing. Our mild to moderate students spend various portions of their day in the general education setting according to their individualized needs. So as I said, we may have a student who is in general education in the mild moderate program, but whose special education teacher consults with the general ed teachers on a regular basis to ensure that the accommodations are in place and that the student is making progress. We may have other mild to moderate students who spend the majority of their day in a special class setting for students with mild to moderate needs, and anywhere in between. So our mild to moderate programs, as I said, they are across all schools in our district because they do encompass that resource level of service. We also have we have the more to pull out, push in type resource level, and then we have consult collab, and then we have the self-contained learning environments like our special classes. At the elementary through high school level, we do have the self-contained special classes. Currently at Juana Maria, we have 3 classes. At Lemon Grove, we have 4 classes. All of the middle schools, the 4 middle schools, have self-contained special classes settings, and so do the 3 comprehensive high schools. The resource supports are available across settings, and independent study requests are considered a change of placement that we look at individually through the IEP process to see if FAPE can be provided in that setting. We do have students who are attending our independent studies programs, but we do need to continue to ensure that FAPE can be provided in that setting because it is a change of placement. So our resource programs in the elementary, per ed code, can be up to 50% of a student's day. That's a long time to be out of the general education class, but we do try to maximize the students' access to general education as we can to support their needs before, and we try to do that before recommending a change in placement to a more restrictive setting. Typically, these students receive support in English language arts, math, and their social emotional needs. And these programs are available at all our elementary sites, all our comprehensive elementary sites. Our special class setting, as I said, are available right now at Juana Maria and Lemon Grove for TK5. We typically have 2 to 3 grades combined in those classes based on the numbers we have. The classes are smaller than a general education class. They typically have 12 to 14 students, and they usually have at least 1 paraeducator in there with the special education teacher. And they are currently using a scaffolded version of the district's core English language arts curriculum. So that was one thing in my collaboration with the curriculum and instruction department, we helped bring on. And the students are mainstreamed for things like PE, recess, lunch, school-wide activities, and at any other times determined by their IEP teams. In the secondary program, it's a little less clear, the delineation between the two in secondary, because children, our students are attending periods for each course rather than having a home-based classroom for the most part. So the SAI resource that we see available at middle school and high school, we would consider, again, up to 50% of their day. So in a 6-period day, if they have 3 periods or less of SAI classes, they would be considered resource. It might include a double block of English language arts if needed, because again, we said that reading tends to feed into all subjects. The resource might include the guided or directed studies period that helps the students with things like study skills, executive functioning, and just additional support in those courses they might be struggling in the general education setting. And then it might include that consult collaboration with the general education teacher, where the high school, middle school SAI teacher is in constant contact with the general education teacher. The special class setting for mild to moderate looks essentially the same, except it will be over 50% of the student's day. So that's when the students tend to have 4 periods of specialized academic instruction that they would be considered at that special class level. It might include other subjects beyond English language arts and math, such as social studies, science. And in these, again, we typically try to have 16 to 20 students in a class rather than as large as some of the general education classes have. The curriculum the curriculum used for the students is determined with the same data that we use to place general education students with. So for example, there are currently 3 adopted English language arts curriculum pieces for the secondary. We have System 44, Read 180, and StudySync. And there is the progress monitoring data that's used for all students assists teams with figuring out which piece of curriculum each student will use across the district. And then IEP data is also taken into consideration with those. And that is pretty much an overview of our mild to moderate programs. So if anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer them or to find the answers at another time for you.
Thank you, Carrie. Let's see if you want to stop sharing your screen.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead. Great.
Christy
No, it's
from
good.
Sunset again. In the mild to moderate programs, just in the general ed classroom, what supports and training is given to the teachers to understand, follow, and support a student's IEP?
So the case manager is the SAI teacher who is in charge of your student's program. And our case managers across all the programs are in contact with general education teachers to make sure that they are aware of the accommodations that are on the student's IEP and the goals that the student is working toward. And they should be working together to help support that student. There are often trainings through our SELPA that are available for general education teachers if they would like to go. A couple of years ago, I can't remember which year it was, Nick, I think it was pre-COVID, we actually started the year with a very large training that was open to all general education teachers, and we had a really good turnout for that. But that's also another role of the program specialist, is that we can come in and support teams to help do classroom observations and help give advice to the teachers about what might be causing a barrier for the student in that classroom. And I hope that helps.
I want to add in there too that I feel like the para aides are kind of overlooked sometimes in that situation, and they need just as much support getting to know the children's IEPs as well. So I feel like that is kind of lacking. So, you know, just from personal experience and talking to a lot of parents, I would really like to see there be some more support for the para aides for sure.
Ian, we are actually currently in the process. We're developing 3 trainings for them that they can access on Canvas at any time in regards to like behavioral management, how to support students' needs on, during, unstructured times like break and during lunch, because we know that's very important. Just empowering them also with like de-escalation strategies, and also understanding we're continually helping them develop their skills in regards to understanding the behavior plans and how to support the students on campus.
And I feel like all of that is great, but allowing them to sit in at an IEP meeting or allowing them to read the IEPs before the student comes in for the year, things like that, I think are very beneficial as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that information there, those comments. Dr. Dreyer, you had your hand up. Or it's still up, actually.
There you go. Thank you. So I just wanted to, I think the question that Christy asked about the training is really important. And I just wanted some clarification, Carrie, as to what you said. So it sounded like what you were saying was that, there are these general trainings that the teachers can opt to go to that are provided through SELPA, but that the SAI teacher is primarily the one who can provide support to the teachers. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. But my question is then, what if the SAI teacher has no experience with the specific disability of that child? Is it then just their option to seek out extra training? Is it part of their, it circles back to the paras, trainings are offered, but who's holding them accountable for actually going to them and learning? Are they being paid for that? Is that actually part of their job, or is it just like extra stuff that they can do?
And can we offer them an incentive?
Mm-hmm. So the district has had several different professional development models. One of those does include our program specialist team, like I said, and we do hold office hours and Zooms and meetings for teachers where we go over different disabilities and we go over different strategies. We share resources with teachers, and there are times when we specifically identify a training we want teachers to go to, and we work with their site administrators to encourage them to go. We also just make those site visits, and we make sure that they're feeling supported to be able to support their students, and make sure that everybody feels like lifelong learning is an important part of our jobs.
Okay, and can I just? Oh, sorry. That's okay. I just want to follow up, and Nick knows this is kind of a personal issue that I have with my son's particular disabilities, but so I will be honest in saying that some of these questions are derived from my own personal frustrations, but a lot of parents can echo what I'm feeling is that I feel like the accountability kind of gets turfed back and forth between the district and the program specialist and the paraeducator and the teacher and the SA teacher. And there's no one who truly takes ownership for making sure that the individuals that are working on a day-to-day basis with these SPED kids actually have the tools that they need to be successful. And so everyone's like fighting with each other, like, no, it's your responsibility. You know, we don't have time. Well, we're not being paid, and I'm not going to allocate this and that. And I mean, I'm very well aware of what SELPA has to offer, which is actually really awesome. They do have a lot of stuff, but I just feel like there's no demands. Like, unless maybe it's in an IEP, which from my experience doesn't get put in an IEP, there's no one that's actually saying like, this child has a non-mainstream disability. Like, this child doesn't have classic autism. This is my own personal experience. So my child does not have autism. So there's not like a straight and narrow training program that would necessarily be applicable to all teachers or a lot of teachers. And so therefore, the teachers and anyone who works with my son is just expected to go off on their own and learn. And that's not happening because everyone, as you can appreciate, is spread super thin with time and resources and emotional availability to do that. So I guess my question is, like, from a parent who's frustrated and from a teacher who doesn't have the skills that they need, like, who do we turn to? Like, there are things available, but no one holds anyone accountable for accessing them. So that's my soapbox. I'll get off, but I know that I speak for a lot of parents.
Well, and thank you for providing that information. And we always continually look into that. And yes, we look at the students' individual needs, obviously, right? And some have more severe needs than other students. So, again, there are checks and balances with teacher observations and making sure that when we look at IEP goals and services and those types of things, that our teachers are appropriately providing instruction. And we have a great teaching staff across the district that are very well trained, and maybe they don't have all of the specific skills for every single impairment. We are there to support them. But again, our special ed staff is well trained, and if there are any areas that they need support in, we do our best to provide those opportunities for those teachers. But thank you for providing those information, and I'll be in touch with you about some other stuff later. So thank you. Ms. Herrera, I believe you had your hand up first. I don't know, it was either you or Ms. Crockett, but we'll go with you first.
You're muted.
We can't, it says you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
I don't know if your microphone is not working. Yeah, we're not.
I took this off now.
There, try now. Okay.
Hi. I was gonna say I didn't think I was gonna have anything to say because my student is in a moderate to severe program, but the whole paraeducator thing, what Laura was saying, and all these other parents are speaking up. It's so true. I have an 8th grader, and since he was in kindergarten, that's what we've been shouting out from the rooftops, that our parents need to be more well versed on our kids' IEPs. They need to have way more training, have more pay, and they should feel that they're like appreciated, because since kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade, there's not one that I've met that doesn't feel worn out, that doesn't feel, and this is before COVID, right? That they don't feel worn out, that they don't feel like, well, what does it matter? If it's a good teacher, it's a great team, and you could feel it, and how my son would come home, right? Because he's nonverbal, so I don't know really what's happening. I have to really depend on these people to tell me. But if it's not a good teacher, you could feel it, because the paraeducators are like extra grumpy, or they're not willing to like say a lot to you. So I really, really do feel that the training for the paras and making them feel that we genuinely need them, and they should be a part of their IEP. They should be allowed to speak to us, because I would ask a question if the teacher was out and they would tell me I'm not allowed to say anything. But why aren't you allowed to say anything? So if they're not allowed to speak, then teach them how to say what they are allowed to say, right? Oh, he had a good day. He did not have a good day. Just there is certain things that people could say without, being a liability to the district, right? And I feel like if you have a nonverbal child, it's like worse, because then you're kind of trying to guess, he wasn't in a bad mood this morning. Something happened, but nobody's speaking up. So I completely agree.
And thank you for that input. I appreciate it. Again, this is, part of the reasons we have these meetings is because we really do want your input, right? Obviously. And we're going to go into a few things later in the meeting, but we appreciate you providing that input, because it helps us, look at all aspects of our department. Ms. Crockett was next. I'm sorry, Ms. Kim Cabero, you will be after her. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. So on that same awesome subject of paraeducators, Dora, just so that you know, it does state in their job description written by VUSD that they are to communicate with the parents both in the morning and in the afternoon, just an FYI. Also, I was that paraeducator. I was a paraeducator for a number of years in SPED before I was married. And you guys are all hitting everything right on the nose. I wish I had better training. I was literally thrown into a classroom and was like, here's a teacher, bye. There was nothing to help me, to help these kids. And then I was expected to do a job that I had no idea what I was supposed to do. So I think everybody is voicing very, very strong opinions on that. And I think they're 100% correct on that. One of the other things that we need to really spend some time looking at is getting them involved with the IEPs. I know a few of them are like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. But the issue is they spend 90% of their day with our kids and doing things for our kids. So when the teachers sit down to do these assessments, they're seeing our kids at little clips at a time instead of getting an overall review. So even if the paraeducator is like, no, I really don't want to be in on the IEP, I think it's really, really needed that the teacher sit down with the paraeducator and kind of go through things one-on-one with them. As far as a gen ed teacher being in with our kids, one thing that we all have to keep in mind as parents is there's a reason that these gen ed teachers did not go into special needs and did not get their degree to teach special needs. And that's something that we need to be a little bit just understanding of. We're expecting these gen ed teachers to jump in full force and be on our team and yay, go, go, go. Well, they didn't go into special ed, and there's a reason for that. And that's okay. But if we give them the training and we give them, the bullet points on our child, if they still don't feel comfortable having that child in that class, do we as a team have a right to move that child into another gen ed class that is more fitting for that child? There was something else. It was kind of a big point too. With more specialized kids' needs and stuff like that, can we as a parent start to come into the classroom and work with the teacher and talk to the teacher more one-on-one to have a better understanding for our child in that classroom? So maybe not an IEP, but at least a sit-down meeting, because I understand having really specific needs for our child and everything, having that paraeducator, having that teacher understand more about our child is really, really valuable. So maybe having a meet and greet prior to school starting where the teacher and the parent can sit down for 15 minutes on a phone call or whatever, I think is going to change a lot of teachers for the better, because they're going to have that understanding prior to getting into the classroom. I think that's it for now.
No, again, thank you for that input. We'll be looking into all of that. And we want to make sure that communication, part of this too, is to make sure that there is open communication, right? With parents, admin, and teachers. So that's something we are continually working on at this point. So thank you for that input, Ms. Crockett. I believe we had, where did she go? Who was up next? Oh, yep, there you go, Ms. Cabrero. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I rose my hand just to say that I agree with the last three moms, and just to bring up the point that at the beginning of the year when we had our pre-SEDAC meeting and we discussed some topics that we'd like to have addressed this year, and I think the number one topic that was agreed on by every mother was the relationship of the paraeducator to the child's IEP, the child and the parent, and being able to have some sort of communication. I would say in my experience, we've had that kind of communication on the Pierpont campus, and it's been at the discretion of the principal, and it's worked out wonderfully for us in our experience. I would like to sort of remind you guys in planning the next few meetings, it seems to me like this is a topic that every single mom on this board really, really, truly wants to address. Could we please make it a part of our agenda before the year runs out? Because we've missed like maybe the last two SEDAC meetings because of the internet outage, et cetera. And before the year gets on too far, I just sort of thought I'd remind you that that is something that I think was at the top of our list, and I wanted to put it out there that you might address it maybe in our next meeting or the following meeting, where we could really get in and out of the whole thing, like very thoroughly and discuss it.
So specifically regarding paras and like the role of the para and what they're, okay. Thank you for that input. We will look into it. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I understand that a lot of parents have been asking, and just so you know, there's a lot of things always going on, obviously in the district that maybe for time constraints or topics we don't have the opportunity to maybe share here at these meetings, but we will be continuing to look at these subjects and provide information when we can. And when we get through this, I'm going to kind of go over a couple things in that regard. As far as I've had a lot of questions. I've been meeting with parents and principals together for quick meet and greets. So we'll go over that in a few minutes. Ms. Morneau and then Ms. Marshall after that. And we probably have time for 3 or 4 more questions or comments. And then we need to move on to have Anne Marie, which I'll have her introduce herself in a little bit, about some health updates. So go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry. I know that we the last 3 parents have talked about this and kind of chiming in on the para subject as well. It is there are a lot of things that we could definitely improve. And I feel like it's just a lot of common sense things. Like, for instance, my child received a new para, I guess now 3 years ago. And we had no idea who was coming. Our principal didn't even know who was coming. So it was kind of like we found out first day of school. And for special needs kids, especially, or anyone, if you're going to be spending like almost an entire day, or in some cases, your entire day with someone, and they're supposed to be your support system and help you get your best experience from your school day, to not even know who they are, or be introduced to them, or even say hello to them before you go to school is crazy. I mean, my children had the opportunity to participate in a swim class at the YMCA for kids with special needs. And it was so simple. And it was something that our para wasn't even able to do, or I don't know if it's just something that they're not allowed to do, but the swim instructor, because she's working with children with special needs, she sent everyone an email just to introduce herself along with a picture. And I know she didn't have the time maybe to call and contact us, but that email made a huge difference because, I was able to read that intro. The children were able to read that intro, and then they had a face. So when they showed up on that first day of swim class, it wasn't a shock, and it wasn't like an additional, anxiety. Like, they obviously had anxiety for going to something for the first time, but when they saw her, that wasn't an additional anxiety. And then even for my child, when he started working with his current parent now a few years ago, it was a rough start. And it was so bad that it caused me to take a trip down to district and have sit there until someone would talk to me about why this para came to our school from nowhere, and was allowing my child to run pretty much roughshod over him and he was spending about 30% of his school day walking around campus because that was the only strategy that they were deploying. And then after some time had passed and I had the opportunity to kind of speak and get to know my para a little bit more, because of, we had a minute, I found out that he had previously worked with high school students. So of course he was trying to use the most gentle strategies with my child, because a high school student and an elementary student in first grade are completely different. So, and how you would approach and help those children are completely different. And it was I felt so bad because I was angry and frustrated with my child's situation. But then after speaking with him and getting to know him, I felt awful because he literally was blindsided with my child, and went in completely blind. There was no support for him. I'd say now that we're very fortunate that my children are at the school where they are. They have a great team there, and everyone communicates very well with each other. They work well with each other. They communicate with me and my husband. But I can't imagine that being your job, and then you're just supposed to figure it out and hope that your coworkers can help support you in a way that you need and help you get through it. They shouldn't have to be on the struggle bus to help a child who's already on the struggle bus, if that makes sense. So for sure, I think this is a topic that has to be addressed in one of our meetings, or should certainly be spoken about at length and not just kind of kept behind the scenes if this is all we're going to keep asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. I again appreciate the comments, Ms. Monroe. I want to reiterate too that we do have, if there's any other questions, I know that a few of you brought up about paras, and it's duly noted. We can talk a little more about that if you have a few questions about it. But we also, if there's any other questions surrounding the programs or just special education as a whole, let's make sure that if you have those questions, please present those also. So thank you again. Not to cut anybody off, I just want to make sure that that's still an open topic. If anybody has any other questions about that also, in addition to the para support that we are discussing currently. I believe was it Miss Marshall next?
Yes.
I don't want to jump over somebody. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, so my question is not really, it's more for children that don't have paras, because my daughter does not have one, but I've noticed that her teacher, especially in kindergarten, got very overwhelmed without having one, and it was not in her IEP to have one, so her school did not provide one. What do teachers do when they get, and I've spoke to other parents the same in kindergarten at that time who did not, their teachers were overwhelmed. Either it was their first year teaching, they were inexperienced, and the teachers get overwhelmed. And what can the teacher do to get support in that situation?
So yeah, it's a good question. We do have a couple teams right now. We have a general education behavioral support team, and then we also have a special education behavioral support team. So we have a process on that where we have it's a request for consult that the teachers, they would go to the school counselor or the school psychologist or administrator, and those forms will be filled out and would go to our expert behavior team that we have. We have multiple board certified behavior analysts right now. We also have a few social emotional specialists that are supporting our students. And through that, what normally would happen is if it's consultation, one of our behavior specialists would come out and observe the classroom and see how they can potentially either support the classroom, if it's a specific child that needs support. We can also look at that and develop strategies and ways to support these children, because yes, especially in kindergarten, as we know, it's very difficult right now in all grades because of the pandemic and coming back from that and students still learning to learn, that we know that there is support needed. And I do believe our gen ed and our special ed teachers they have a lot of great training and they're really good teachers. But on top of that, if they need additional support, we're there as a district. We respond quite quickly too when they bring it to either the principal or the school psychologist. We respond as quickly as we can. If it's an emergency, obviously we're there immediately. But if it's something where we can come after a few days and do some observations and work with students and teachers, and if they need additional strategies and supports, we're there to help them for sure. That's a great question.
Yeah, because in my situation, they ended up having me kind of demanding a para, and they did a reevaluation of her. They said she didn't need a para. They wanted her to gain her independence. So the teacher was still left very overwhelmed because my daughter was, in kindergarten right out of preschool. So this was a few years ago.
Got it.
But
Okay.
She needed that extra help. She really did. But they wanted her to have her independence, which I understand. So the teacher was just kind of left like in a corner, I ended up coming into the classroom and helping. I volunteered to do that. So I don't know if that's something that maybe you can make more of an option for parents if, they don't want to give them a para and the teacher is still having a hard time, helping your child and keeping up with general education. Like maybe the parents can volunteer to come in and help specifically with their child, because that's what I did.
And I appreciate you being that involved. Yes, I appreciate that, and it's something we'll continue to look into. And again, we want to make sure that support's there. And how long? Well, I mean, we don't need to go into details, but that's something we need to continue to look at for sure, Ms. Marshall. Okay. Thank you for that information.
Thank you,
Ms. Rubalcava, and then Ms. Reyes, and then we're probably going to move on to Anne Marie at that point to bring some health information for you guys. So Ms. Rubalcava, go ahead.
Yes, hi. One of the things that I wanted to bring up as I'm listening to everybody was, I know that we can only do so much as a district, and I think it's all stemming from funding and having, additional funds to either pay our staff or our paraeducators to do proper onboarding. But I always think about, what additional funds can we bring to support special education? And I know with COVID-19, obviously there were some funds there, but I also think, is there any direction that is happening within our special education department and bringing in additional funds that can support all this? Because there's so much one person can do. And I think what we really need to be discussing is adding extra people, really, right? To be able to accommodate all these different needs for our students.
So we actually, and I'm going to go over an update a little bit for the learning recovery plan. And we gathered all of your input about that. So that's something I am going to go over, and we can kind of look at that for sure. And hopefully, we're still working on the plan, but I'll go over an update with that So I appreciate that input. Ms. Reyes.
Okay, I'm just going to touch on that a little bit too, and just say that I sit on some school site councils, so I've seen budgets and things like that, and I know that schools are kind of required to pay from their personal school funds for these paras if they decide that they do need one in a classroom, and they have to kind of, redistribute the budget if that's necessary, and I feel like maybe we should give the parents an option to change the teacher. In that case, if the teacher's really overwhelmed, then maybe go to a different class and see if another teacher has a different relationship with that child, if they're really trying to gain the independence portion, or a different program at a different school. I knew after my son was in kindergarten with a para, we still needed to move him to a different program. So just allowing the parents to know all of their options on that. And then just one more quick thing about budget and support. Pacific High School has kind of been overwhelmed and flooded with the need of children to have credit recovery because of COVID and the pandemic. And they're about to get a bunch of new special education students, but they're not going to get a new para aide. So they're going to stick with their one teacher in their one classroom, and the one para aide that actually goes all around the whole school to help with even general education is now going to take on double duty. And the principal's just like, well, I don't even know if we could get one. And, the funding is at question even.
So part of the thing we're running into, just so you know, is that it has been tough to find. We have a lot of open positions. I want to let everybody know that. And we are heavily recruiting to bring people in. So as you know, this is kind of something that we've been going through as a district, and it's not just our district, it's the state, it's the country right now. So we are, I didn't want to cut you off there.
They get offered the support though, because they're taking on these additional students second semester, and it's kind of like a whole new program. It's a lot actually to add those new students over there. And I just want you guys to know that they do deserve the support.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting your student and your school. Ms. Herrera, we'll go with you and then we'll move on. Thank you.
I just wanted what Laura said right now. I'm also part of school site councils of 3 schools since my child has been small, and she's right. If you guys get more involved, not just with the special ed part, but really start looking at the money, there is money available. You have a say, right? If we should spend it on whatever we should spend it on. So I just wanted to say that's true. But also one time I brought it up, and the principal at that school said, well, no, that's not for special ed kids. That doesn't matter. It's the special ed department takes care of the special ed department. So just make sure that if you are part of that group, that you are speaking up for that, because that wasn't right. So thankfully I was there, and I was like, well, no. And then we researched it more, and now it's right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Herrera. And again, thank you for your valuable information. I understand that para educator support is a hot topic, and that's something we need to continue to look at. So appreciate you providing that information. Ms. Cabrera.
Can I just throw out one, going around the problem just in the interim suggestion? And I haven't had to do this, but it's just an idea. If there are not funds like today, you may be able to approach your PTA, and because it would be to everyone's benefit, obviously, to have an extra para if the para is needed. So that's just an idea, whether your child needs an aid or assisted technology, things like that, if you're not getting it. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for that update. All right. We're going to move on to Anne-Marie. If you can introduce yourself and your title and provide your update.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Anne-Marie Bidleymeyer. I'm the Coordinator of Health Services and Prevention Programs. I'm also one of the credentialed school nurses for the district. And I'm hoping I'm saying your name correctly, Mrs. Crockett. What she's done in her past, that's how I started out right after I graduated high school. I was at Ventura County Office of Education. they didn't even call them paraeducators back then because I'm that old. We were teachers aid, good old fashioned teachers aid that became paraeducators. And so, so that's how I started my official career as I was going off to college for about 4 years. Thank you guys for having me. What I wanted to speak to is I know since we've been back from winter break, just our COVID kind of updates with Ventura County Public Health, and then what we've been able to accept and basically put in place in Ventura Unified School District, because I'm sure you guys have already received numerous Parent Square messages from Dr. Rice via Marianne, our communications coordinator. And we didn't get anything regarding COVID so much the first week we were back. During this start of the surge when we came back, because we are still in a surge right now for all of Ventura County, pretty much all of California. It is starting to kind of decline a bit, but we're still considered in the surge. And so the second week we came back, I know it was, I think that Monday was a holiday. I'm not even sure now. Tuesday, there was an update. Wednesday, there was an update. Because they had given us new guidance. And so we were trying to stay as fluid as we could and accept it as fast as we could with this surge. But part of what I wanted to address with you guys, all of you as representatives for all of the communities within our schools, is that it was definitely addressed that right now, not only Ventura Unified, all school districts in Ventura County, Ventura City as a whole, Ventura County, and the state of California, the contact tracing investigations, I can't say are on a full hold, but it's just, and I can't ever say impossible. It's just, we're trying, it's not as feasible as it was before we left for winter break. And so we are trying our best, but as a department, our nurses and our health techs, we have made it a priority. And this is what was not conveyed out in the Parent Square message. It did say that, kind of everything was on hold and that we'd be getting back to it as soon as we're able to. But I wanted to let you guys know there's three areas that we are trying to do as much of an investigation as we can. When we encounter a kiddo that receives special ed services that is in a certain setting that we really need to look at. And we do really try and look at mod severe settings. We try and look at anybody who's medically fragile, whether they receive special ed services or not. But medically fragile, there are others like somebody who, a kiddo or teacher, staff, para that would be in an emotionally disturbed setting. And maybe, there were some behavioral happenings that week. And so we try and do what we can right now during the surge. Definitely that's one area within, it's more so I'll say special ed, but it could be any kiddo in our district, any staff in our kiddo district. But we really are trying to also be very mindful, because also there's a lot more contact with, I'll say, paras that may have, that adult extra assistance that's helping that kiddo out, or we're doing a 2-man lift, or there's a procedure, that type of thing. So the second area is when it's a grouped activity. So that's more like robotics, athletics, whatever, music that's outside of that class setting period. Whether it's our little ones all the way, our little ones all the way to our super seniors. Then our third area is when we have like 3 or more in one setting. And of course, during the surge, we have seen that. And public health is working with us daily, multiple times a day, to figure out, what we need to do and to move forward to stop the spread as much as possible. But just in the last 24 hours, you guys probably know, last night on the news, this morning on the news, now there's been a report of an Omicron subvariant. And so, we're just trying to, go with the flow and protect our kiddos and our staff and our those parent volunteers that, might be going on overnight type of things, as much as possible. That type of thing. And so I wanted to let you know we are still doing, even though the Parent Square message has said, it's kind of on hold right now, there are areas where, yes, but we are still trying to do as much as we can. And then sometimes, again, not as feasible as before, but we're so thankful to our families and our staff members that do report. They stay home, when they have pretty much the typical COVID symptoms that started out March 2020 has really evolved. Anything off, with your child or yourself. So one of my health techs has triplets, and then an older kiddo. And coming back from winter break, and she said I could, tell this to others. One of her triplets, her eyes just looked off. Her as a mommy knew. So she tested her positive. So she tested her other two triplets positive. And then she didn't have any tests for herself or her older daughter. So they all stayed home, when we returned from winter break. And then, she was back to work the next day type of deal. And so, but all of her triplets, of course, were put into isolation. And so, it's really, we've seen backaches, lower backaches, neck hurting, things that you might think, okay, well, as a nurse, I go meningitis, type of thing, anything different. It's not just the loss of taste and smell, or, the fever, that type of thing. So anything different, I'm sure you guys are all, you're very well versed, I'm sure, on this, but I did want to mention that. And then, of course, last week and then this past week, we have another new version of the student symptom tree. And if for some reason, staff members, there's no longer a staff symptom tree, it's a little bit different. And that's always risk management, although we try and help out as much as possible. And then we do the students and their families. But the student health decision tree originally started out for in the school setting. And then they kind of merged it last September through about December to school setting and community-based, which means in the home, or you're with cousins, or you're at a park, that type of thing, but outside of this educational setting. It's kind of gone back to within the educational setting again. And then we went from like 6 questions in that what's called frequently asked questions for VCPH, Ventura County Public Health. Now it's pages. It's like, I think 30 some. And so now what they took off kind of in here for outside of the educational setting is within the FAQs. So, of course, it gets a little bit more complicated, but good news is that they've really trying to shorten the isolation period if a family can meet a requirement and chooses to meet the requirement. So a kiddo who is COVID positive still has 10 days, but there's an opportunity to come back right after that 5th day on the 6th day if a family wants to test their child and their child tests negative on that 5th day or after, and their symptoms are pretty much virtually gone. And so there's just, there's been some kind of major changes because over winter break, the Center for Disease Control came out with all this stuff nationwide. And, it's got to go through the state, through our local county, and then it hits us and we either accept it or we don't. And we were right on it. We jumped on it. So with all of this in the air in January, though, we have seen a lot of cases that people do want to come back. The kiddos, the staff members, unfortunately, they're still testing positive day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9, and then day 10. They're still allowed to come back on day 11, as long as their symptoms are pretty much gone, because they've already done the isolation for 10 days. But there is that opportunity if a family wants to, and they do not have to, test on day 5 and can come back on day 6 if they're, all the requirements are met. And there's, they shorten the family quarantine if you can't separate out. So that's good if a family chooses to take on the requirements and they meet them. So there's just some little changes that make a huge difference. And so we can get our kids back in person, and our teachers and our paras and our nurses and our health techs back in person, and all of us, office managers, principals, everybody back in person as much as early as possible, but as safe as possible. I think that you guys might have some questions, which might be something I didn't cover. Probably.
Okay, yeah, we can take a few minutes for some questions. Miss Hinonosa, are you there?
Yes, hi. I wanted to ask a question. I know that when all of the, we happened to be on vacation the week that we came back after winter break, which was kind of a catch-22. I was almost glad because I wasn't sure how things were going to be because everything was kind of a little nuts at that time. But that's when I think the end of that week, I said, well, let me keep an eye out on the emails because we usually get those updates saying, there's a positive report. And then, in the history, it was if you were considered a close contact, we will notify you individually.
Yes.
And then by that Friday, I didn't get any notifications from my school. And then by that Friday, which was almost a little difficult because I was just coming back from vacation and it was Friday and I think it was around 4 p.m. So it was after hours, not really anything I can do at that point, but it was, you may have noticed there's no notices, but it's because you were sorting things out. And I guess I just didn't really understand that. I mean, I understand you guys were, I think specifically, so am I still going to get a contact if my son was considered a close contact, or are we just not getting those emails? Because it's happening, it's going on, but I feel like we're a little bit in the dark because it's, I just want to know how dark is my room? Is it completely dark or am I going to get something?
No, great question. And that's why I had started out that, Ventura Unified, but all school districts in Ventura County and then Ventura County overall, Ventura City, state of California, everyone is overwhelmed with the surge of cases. And so what we could do before we left for winter break, it's not that it's impossible, it's just not feasible at this point. So those 3 areas I was mentioning, that's when somebody is going to get that contact. And public health, it just took them this long. Last week, they introduced a new approach to investigations called group tracing, which we're looking into right now. I've developed this week something for my health techs and nurses to filter in, but you may get that call possibly. The principals are not sending out my parent square message that would come from them. That was mine, that I would have to customize every single event that happened. Because when we came back that first week, we had 349 cases on campuses positive that week. And our goal is to isolate, remove them, from spreading infection, and then get them home to a safe environment as soon as we find out. And then we had 694 off-campus reports. So, and then the second week, we had 592 cases on campus positives.
Wow.
These are just students, not staff. I'm not talking staff. Then we had only 392 off campus because that number should decrease, right, as we're back on campus. Then just last week, and we do the numbers today, but I think Marianne puts it out on Monday usually, but I'll have them tomorrow. We had 592 again that were on campus positives that we identified or families told us that they were there yesterday or the day before. And then, we were able to secure them, get them off campus, and then, or they already were, but they had been on campus, and then get them isolated and get them taken care of. And we went down to 284 off-campus reports. So just seeing the numbers overall, since we've come back, it's been 1,533 that we know of that have been either that we know of or reported to us that we've been able to confirm on-campus positives overall. And this is our littlest to littles in the EIC, all the way to our oldest, she's 90 some years old in adult ed. So it's our entire district. It's all kiddos, all programs. That's a key here. It's both EICs, it's all jump starts, and it's adult ed. It's after school programs too, and all school sites. And so then off campus reports, thankfully that number is only 1370. So that's kind of coming down. And so, but that's why that one I had presented Monday, I was just kind of trying to go. And then Tuesday, that first week back, kind of in disbelief. Wednesday, I presented something to Dr. Castro and Dr. Rice and Eric Reynolds. I'm like, this needs to go out. It took them, they had to also wrap everything around and make sure that, talk with other superintendents. Were we the only one or what was going on? And so then that's why on Friday, it was my letter and Dr. Rice's letter together that went out to say, we can't do contact tracing right now. We're going to get back to it as soon as we can, but we're doing the best we can. So that's why those notifications have stopped right now. But in that also notification on Friday, it said if you've been on campus, more than likely you've been exposed. Whether you're a staff or student, any grade, any setting, because of the numbers we saw that first week, and it's pretty much kind of stayed. We're getting less and less and less. I don't know what this new variant that I heard about last night, this morning. again, I think I said this at one of the first SEDAC meetings at the beginning of the year. COVID's nobody's job, but yet it's everybody's job. And it's overwhelming. I mean, I don't even know how our office managers are doing it right now, along with the principals. I have no idea. Cause the front line, they get all the, the calls or, all the families for everything. And so, so we're just trying to do our best, but just know if you've been on campus or your child's been on campus, they're probably had an exposure. But again, if, in those three areas, anybody medically fragile or in certain special ed settings, we are trying to do the best we can. We're also trying to keep classrooms open as safe as we can. I work with public health multiple times a day. So let's say if I had an exposure, I'll say in a mod severe setting, and we're getting reports and let's say it's a little one. So let's say one of the EICs, let's just say, this is just hypothetical. And, the positive person, when they were infectious, for some reason, was wearing a mask, but maybe our littles weren't wearing a mask or something. And, serviced everybody in the classroom. But, trying to figure out then, because our littles cannot be vaccinated. There's not a possibility at this time for them to be vaccinated under 5. So trying to figure out what's safest, and that, I take direction from public health to figure out, are we going to send all of them home? Or are we going to watch them and do a little bit more, not an active screening, but kind of an active screening? Because we know our parents, we ask you to do passive screenings, but, maybe take temps for that one classroom for the next 10 days, 14 days. But again, we have a lot of staff out, from paras to teachers, to my nurses, to my health techs. So we're just, it's our reality, our district's reality, and we're just trying to put one step in front of the other right now and go forward and go with the flow with the changes also, which, it's always one way or the other, because if, there's a family that, wants us to be back in person and no more distance stuff, then we've got a family over here that doesn't want to come on campus and thinks that we should be all distance. And so it's just, trying to weigh that out, but also knowing the constraints we have from the state and then locally too. Did that help answer your question?
It does. I guess I think I probably went into panic mode when I saw the message, and I'm like, all I got from it was there's too many to count and you're not going to know about it. So that's kind of what I think I digested. But I wanted to say, one is thank you for everything you're doing. I obviously know how difficult I can't imagine how difficult it is to even manage all of it. And so we appreciate everything you're doing. And I guess what I took from that is that the contact tracing you just can't be done because there's so much. So as far as previously was considered a close contact when we would be notified, that's not happening because it's too hard to investigate that. I think my only one thing I would like to suggest is that you did throw out some numbers. And I think just for me, that's probably, I feel like, and maybe I missed an email somewhere, but that's probably the first time I feel like I've heard that. And it's a little bit, I probably need to take a moment to digest. Everybody has, different opinions and different, ways, and it's all respectable. But for me personally, that's a lot to digest. I think that's important to share, not to scare anyone, but to give people reality, because we know we're completely in the dark as far as the contact tracing can't happen, things like that can happen. But in my mind, my question has been, how bad? Are they saying that because, most of the staff are out and it's really hard to trace it? Or are they saying that because there's so many kids? I guess I just didn't understand the fine lines between what those messages were, and you throwing out those numbers answers all of that. It gives me a vision of what's really been happening at the schools. And I think it's important as a parent for me to at least know that, a number.
No, that's perfect. And it's on the dashboard. So if you go right to the website, our Ventura Unified website, you just go to the COVID updates right there. They've got the last symptom tree for kiddos. They have the FAQs. They have our plan, our safety plan, and they have the numbers every week. And we submit them. Risk manager and I submit. He does staff. I do families and students, or students, I should say, with families. By Friday, and then it gets published on Monday. Just in case, I submit it at 9:00 after our COVID clinics finish and we get those positives. And then I have to figure out, were they on campus? Were they off campus? Are they part of, group sports or what it might be? So those numbers, and right now the higher numbers are typically been our traditional comprehensive high schools, which are 2, Ventura and Buena, the higher numbers. Everybody has numbers. But the higher numbers on campus where, they might have thought they saw the news, they're high schoolers, they're like, oh, I'm positive, but I'm past the 5th day and I don't have any symptoms, or I was never having symptoms. They mean well, but they're, showing up on campus, and we just have to gently remove them and just make sure everything's safe. So the contact tracing, I had to go back to what we've done for the last 20 years with communicable disease and create like a what's called a line list, which is technical. But so within this is how we identify, we've had 3 or more in, I'm going to make this up, Mrs. Parker's class at J. Sarah, which could be a special ed class, might be just a 5th grade class that's considered regular ed. And so, but, everybody, there's different kiddos and staff that come into a classroom, and different kiddos and staff that, leave a classroom or go out for different services too. And so we've got to take all that into consideration. We're still doing that. But as families, just so you know, so you can spread this out to your families, while we're in the surge, it could be us. It might be somebody from public health calling you. And because that's what's happening. I know for sure at J. Sarah, Will Rogers, Sunset. I think there was one other elementary our 2nd week back, because they actually, I can't say they have more than us, but they not only have their COVID specialist nurses under Dr. Levin, then they have a whole team of investigators. And so when we submit the information every day, they are also saying, okay, I want to make sure your kiddo was in this class this day, and just asking, are you isolating? Are you quarantining? Because there's a difference between isolation and quarantine. And so they go over things too. And I've seen an uptick in that this month, which thankfully, I don't know if they got more staff on. So that was great. And so it could be, and if there's not a phone call, then your kiddo might have been exposed, but not necessarily a direct close contact within 15 minutes, within 6 feet. More than 15 minutes, sorry, within 6 feet.
Right. So, Anne-Marie, we do have a few more questions in that. Thank you. I mean, you're providing some very, very valuable information. We'll have Ms. Pope, then Ms. Marshall, then Ms. Reyes go.
Okay.
And then at that point, we're probably going to have to move on, but I want to make sure that we answer these concerns. So thank you for coming on today, Anne-Marie, to answer these questions. So Ms. Pope.
Thank you so much. First of all, for being here and all your work. I know the situation feels very out of control for everyone, but it is meaningful to me to see your passion and how hard you're working, and just, you being here. So thank you.
She's here day and night. I think I stay late, and then I see him like, well, why is your light still on, Anne-Marie? Well, there is a pandemic going on, so
yeah,
maybe that's.
Oh my gosh, I know, definitely not what you signed up for when you enter that kind of field. So I had just a couple of questions around like healthcare, or maybe suggestions. I believe at the last SEDAC meeting, I mentioned that it would be awesome to have like take home tests. And it looks like finally that's come through, because a lot of our kids won't tolerate like a testing station or somebody giving them something to go up their nose, or the drive-through and all of that. So I was wondering if there's any way that, like, as we go through this pandemic and its many stages, if we could make sure that those tests can be prioritized for special education, maybe if there's new limits on them. I know right now they're in abundance and we can get them from the post office and they're all over the place, but just kind of foreseeing that this may go on for a while, that is an issue and has been an issue for long before the tests came forward. So that's more of a suggestion. And then the other thing I was thinking was maybe if it would be possible to add to the list of like priority. I know you mentioned like groups and special education, which thank you for that. Families that have immunosuppressed, like actually immunosuppressant and suppressed people at home. And I know that's a little bit harder to track, but it's one thing to be like elderly and at risk, and it's another thing to have no immune system because maybe there's like a cancer patient at home. And I've heard a lot of that, and it's really hard to send your kids to school knowing that you're taking a risk, and it's also hard to hold them back from their education to try to prevent that risk. So I just wanted to speak up for those families that maybe the district could find some way to track that. And then the last one, I know it comes into legalities, but obviously our teachers and school staff often will know if there has been a direct contact long before the district and public health and everybody gets to them. I know it's hard with like HIPAA and everything, but I personally would love for the teacher to be able to say, hey, there was a positive case today, just be like extra diligent. You may hear that you need to isolate or not, but just to be able to have a little bit more of that communication, especially for our kids that can't communicate at all on their own. Like I'm like 99% sure that my son has like no idea why he's wearing a mask even, which is amazing. He has no anxiety around it. We don't have the rest of the issues that come along with knowing all of the gory details of this pandemic. But I also send him to school every day, not really knowing if like his mask is above his nose all day or, how diligent he is about not hugging his friends, or it's just really hard to be in that mod severe setting during these times. And it would be great if the teachers could give us a little bit more information while still following the laws. So thank you so much. Again, that's my main message is thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. So really quick, I'll just point out, so your last desire one. So unfortunately, because of FERPA, HIPAA is the adults in the world, FERPA is our kids and our families. It has to stay within the scope of our credentials and then our job descriptions. And so, we've had a few teachers that have done that, but then they don't know the entire investigation or what point investigation that communication can go out. And we've had families really, really scared when there was no exposure at all to their child. And so it has to be a certain point in the investigation that we get to, that we know who to communicate it out to and what's appropriate, if that makes sense. And so, but it's also, we don't want somebody's credential being at risk either, but weighing that safety and, the reality of things. So thank you for that. When it comes to our families and immunosuppressed, I'm one of them. I go home to my mom, who moved her in with me, and she's stage 4 lung cancer. Her mutation is, there's nothing out there. And so I get it. I get it when somebody's totally compromised and they have a medicine they're taking that has wiped them out. And so it's families that will let us know that information. That's what's beautiful, because, a family doesn't have to tell us. And so if a family does, that's why the health office, that school nurse or nursing and health techs, we're the advocates even if it's not the kiddo on campus, it's the family, makes that whole child. And so, yes, that's important. Really important is just what somebody will divulge to us. Thank you. And we try to take care of, especially whether it's COVID or whether it's somebody who can't get their vaccines right now because they have somebody in the home receiving chemo and they're, with the shedding through their, feces and that type of thing, their poop. And so point on. So, but please encourage your families to let us know that information, and we'll keep it confidential, but also we'll know how to handle a situation for that family if there has been definitely a known exposure or even the possibility of, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can a communication maybe go out about that, like to the families, maybe just mixed in with another communication saying, by the way, if somebody in your family is on, I want to just obviously you don't want to get a billion emails saying, oh yeah, my grandma's 74, or whatever that might look like. You want to get emails from people who are, like you said, cancer treatments. I don't know if there's some way to specify that, but I don't think that people would think to tell the health office. And I'm not even sure that if you told your teacher or the principal that they would think to tell the health office and they would think to tell you. So I'm just wondering if maybe that communication can go out to families that do have kids on campus, and they can just email direct.
That's a great point. And I will try and put my head together first with Marcus and then take it above us. Yeah, cool. Thank you. And then the last point for tests. So we are dependent on what we get from the state. And then from the last batch came from Ventura County Public Health. The first batch, we had asked for 60,000. We weren't sure what we were going to get. We got 16,000. So we had enough for all families, for students, and then all staff, and adult ed. This last batch, we didn't get as many. So unfortunately, it's only our students that are K through 12 So not even our little ones, and then also not even base or staff members. They had to wait until I think it's next week. If there's any left over, they're welcome then, to ask for one. So not me, but the powers that be had to take exactly what came down from the state to the county and then who it gets distributed to. And it was first to be issued out to, but I hear what you're saying in the sense of any kiddo in receiving special ed services in special ed settings. So I will mention that for sure. And then I want to let everybody know we still are offering Monday through Friday because we don't have to, but we put this together. It's for students and staff. A COVID clinic daily, Monday through Friday on each school day. And Monday, even though it's not a school day for kids, we're going to have it on Monday too at Ventura and Buena. It's different school sites. But Mondays and Thursdays are Buena and Ventura because we tend to see a lot. And it's kind of then both ends of town. A lot of students and families come through. And I have a nurse, and either an RN or LVN or both at each COVID clinic. And when a student cannot administer themselves, that's why it has to be a nurse or a doctor or health provider, appropriate health. My health techs cannot. The parent cannot. We found out the hard way at Elmhurst at the beginning of the year. And so I went and did a whole class at Elmhurst a couple times. And it wasn't a special ed setting. It was a regular kinder setting. It was something with public health to keep kiddos in class. And it has to be a health provider. Or just to throw it out there, and I know it's not widely advertised, but if your kiddo cannot tolerate a nasal swab, for you at home to do it, or for one of our nurses to do it, or going to the doctor, it's not something you can do. We do have a saliva test. It's by appointment on Wednesdays here at the ESC, and you go through, I believe, risk management, and that's staff and or students. It's for those who need to do it that way. What's best for them, and it's free too. And then we also have our VCPH that we host in our parking lot. That's to anybody in the family, staff, students, and their families from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And winter break, it was out. Our line was outgoing and backing up all the way to the freeway. Now it's much better right now, much better. And I know they close between 3 and 4 each day, But that's, you can be in the car with your but I think I haven't done that one yet, but I think you have to swab yourself, I think.
So sorry, I don't want to cut anybody off. We only have about 5 or 6 more minutes before we need to move on from this topic. So I'm going to have Miss Marshall. Thank you for being patient. And again, thanks again, Anne-Marie, for coming on, and Ms. Pope for providing, whoever's asking these questions. These are great questions and great answers.
Really Thank you. The numbers you gave out just concerned me. And I was just wondering, what is considered a school outbreak? And if there is a school outbreak, what is being done? Are the schools shutting down, or are they just going to keep trying to do contact tracing, which obviously isn't working very well?
Very good. So I'm going to read it right because this is one of the changes because of the surge. And it might go back to what it was before, where before was a percentage of a school district, percentage, to me, it's always 3 or more in one setting because that's how I've been trained up in school nursing, whether it's lice, whether it's COVID, whether it's varicella, whether it's mumps. So 3 or more in one setting to me at one time in a 14-day period is a potential outbreak to me. But right now, as defined by Ventura County Public Health as of January 19th, is under what circumstances should temporary school closure be considered due to excessive COVID-19 cases? Per the California Department of Public Health, California is committed to preserving the safety and success of in-person instruction at K-12 schools. A temporary school closure due to COVID-19 should be a last resort and considered only after all available resources have been exhausted in an attempt to preserve in-person education. Data continue to accumulate that schools are the safest environment for students to avoid COVID-19 infection. This is coming from them. Temporary school closures should be considered only after conferring with Ventura County Public Health COVID-19 school outbreak team and with the public health officer, which is Dr. Levin. There is no specific case threshold at which the state recommends an immediate temporary closure of a classroom or school. For more information, then it says, click on this link for CDPH. So that's number 25, which is right on our website in the FAQ, so you can read it, besides me just hearing it. Then there's another one that talks about when to shut down a classroom due to multiple positive cases. And then again, same thing. We need to consult with public health, which I do multiple times a day. And Eric Reynolds does too for risk management, but maybe not as much as I do. And, I'm talking it through with them and to figure out, what we're doing and what we should be doing besides me already stepping up the extra foggers, the disinfecting, and then also figuring out, can we do it better in this classroom? Because remember, in April of last year, they took away the 6 feet distance and made it 3 feet. And then when we came back in August, there was no social distancing at all. And still, good hand washing and then distancing. And yes, mask wearing are probably and then those that can vaccinate and choose to vaccinate will help to protect and build up that herd immunity for our little ones that can't vaccinate or those who can't vaccinate. So those are probably the best 4 things right now. But it's good hand washing and then trying to stay distance, which luckily in our settings, we're all over each other for the most part as we're learning and growing and teaching, but we don't have as many students in one class setting as, let's say, a traditional class at middle school like Cabrillo or Ventura High. So that's what's nice within our setting here, for sure. But to answer your question, there's no more this percentage right now. We submit everything daily. And if I've got something going on that I know of, I call immediately, even if I haven't had a chance to submit it because we're still trying to figure it out at the school site. And then we work it through with them and they tell us what to do.
Okay, yeah, because I just know personally in my son's class, 3 of his friends were out with COVID and his teacher all at once. We got no notifications, no school shut down, nothing. So it's just a little concerning. Like, is the contact tracing are you even doing it? And if you're not going to do it, then are you going to just allow an outbreak just to outbreak throughout the whole school and just, I don't know. I'm just a little concerned about that. It just feels like just let it burn, just
so
let everybody get it, whatever. Because, nobody's notifying you. Nobody's.
So if you as a mom needed to know, you're one of the school sites that public health was all over the 2nd week and 3rd week. I haven't heard them calling anybody this week at J. Sarah. I haven't heard because I usually get families calling, like they called us or principals saying, public health. I said, of course, and because we're at this level, this level or this level with this. And so, no, we're watching. There's about right now between 10 and 12 elementary sites. I'm keeping a really close eye on right now, really close eye.
Okay, yeah, because that just concerned me. That's all, because I know personally, his class, they had like 5 kids in class one day because the whole class was being, I'm like, well, we didn't get one notification and the school's not sure. This is obviously an outbreak.
And you've got to remember too, coming back, we have some kids that did not come back. They chose to keep home because of, the surge and the families knew it and they made that personal choice or they might not be able to come because they had exposure, an outside exposure, whether it's in their home or it was just, somebody came to visit or they went to a party. And our families are being really great right now in the sense of trying to be protective not only of their own kiddos, but also everybody else. And sometimes we don't have kids in school because it has nothing to do with COVID too. That's part of the miss. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have time for like 2 more minutes, Anne-Marie, with one more question from Ms. Reyes. So I have to provide some updates at the end of this meeting that we have to get off at 11. So I apologize. Ms. Reyes, go ahead. Yes. Thank you. Okay. Very thorough information, though. This is great.
Absolutely. And I just want to reiterate that there is a lot of different things going on campus and with staff that they're asking the sports to be limited for the parents to come. And they are asking for everything to be done on Zoom, like the district leadership meetings and things like that. Asking for all the meals to be eaten outside. So there's a lot of precautions that are really being asked of the schools to kind of follow to, just to kind of touch on that. I do want to touch on the fact that the governor did pass the bill that removes the option for distance learning. So our schools won't be shut down. We won't go on distance learning or anything like that. Everything is kind of like at your own discretion kind of with that, right? You could chime in. No problem with that. Yeah, if you want to. Let's see. So the extra precautions. I just wanted to say that when my son's class did go down, the nurse did call me and she did let me know So I think it's just kind of a school base on how overwhelmed they are, but I think they are diligently trying to get the information out there to the families in the classrooms. And then I was just curious if you had a like overall percentage of like our district, like with students and staff, like what was our percentage of like people being out? Because I know at the last PAC meeting, Dr. Rice had mentioned like Simi Valley had like 30% out. So I didn't know if we had a percentage. That's all.
Good
Anne
question.
Marie, we have about 1 minute and we need to move on.
Really quickly, I don't know if a percentage offhand. I can ask. I have the numbers for definitely students, but that again is on the COVID dashboard, and it's got the enrollment and staff member numbers. So we could figure that out for sure. But yes, you're right. According to Assembly Bill 86, they did take away. Although, if I do have to, or with Dr. Rice and then Ventura Public Health, have to close down an entire classroom, or let's say a wing at a school or a site, then that's when we have allowances. We could try and figure out something with the state. And because we're being directed by public health to do that. So that's a little bit different, and we're not there yet. I don't know if there's anywhere in the county that has had to do that in the sense of public schools yet. I'm not sure, but I can ask Dr. Rice that. He goes to weekly superintendent meetings. And this is a big topic of theirs. And sorry, you did say, so your nurse calling you. So my nurses and health techs from the sites, if your kiddo has been in a situation, those three that we are definitely trying to do, whether it's football's not going on right now, but football, or if it's a mod severe or DHH or ED setting, but there's something that we know that might have happened, or again, that infectious individual was, dipping around and within more than 15 minutes, within 6 feet. The kicker is for public health, masks are so important, but we have to even consider it if even all masks were worn. It's just a difference of when we can allow kids to stay in or not type of deal. And so we are making those phone calls too. It's just the overall general notifications, if that makes sense, because we did a big, massive general one that, basically during the surge, if you're on campus, you've been exposed. But the direct ones, or if we know of a medically fragile situation and your child has been within it that we know of, and we're at that point of investigation, we're going to let you know too. Yep, of course.
Well, thank you for all that information. And Ms. Bidlingmeyer, thank you for coming on. Obviously, you can stay. We have 10 more minutes. Ms. Reyes, thank you for providing that information. And everybody else that is pitching in on this conversation. So I'm going to move. We have about 9 minutes. I want to move quickly through some committee reports, some district updates. So as you know, part of the role of the SEDAC parent reps is to represent their school community by contributing parent voices and feedback to the work as we as a school district each day and acting as an informed resource for families. So we envision that the specifics of this will be established by the rep and principal at each school community. And we know that every school community is a little unique. So we've been spending a lot of time working on this and facilitating this. Mr. Conant has had me meet with a lot. I haven't got through all of them. We're working through the parents and principals as fast as we can. We're having about a 15 to 20 minute meeting where it's principal, SEDAC rep, and usually me on that call, on that Zoom call. We would do them in person, but obviously for safety purposes, we are holding the majority of these over Zoom if possible. And one of the questions that continually has been asked, it's like through my talking to all of you, is that, and if your meeting hasn't happened yet, we are looking to set that up soon, is how do you as a parent communicate with other parents on campus? The way we have to set it up, because obviously we have to be careful about privacy rights, is that you in communication with administration, the goal would be to find a way to provide your email or, some contact information that goes either through like a newsletter, through Parent Connect, whatever. Again, every school is a little bit different. And through that, other parents that have children with special needs can reach out to you, and that you can be in communication with that. And unfortunately, I would like to take some questions on that, but we are running short on time. But I just wanted to give an update about that. Another thing that's really good, really great in the district that we've been working on is our learning recovery plan. All stakeholder input has been compiled into an action plan that Mr. Konantz presented to our Ventura County SELPA prior to winter break. SELPA was very impressed with the plan, and we are now beginning the implementation of various activities and initiatives listed in the plan as a result, in part because of your input. In fact, today, a group of our teachers and special education department chairs are attending a training session with Ventura County Associates of School Psychologists regarding 21st century best practices and working with students with emotional disturbance. So let me kind of give you a couple ideas of what actually we're looking at. And I know Dr. Castro, who's on the call, I wasn't going to shout him out, our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, has also been fully involved with Marcus Konantz, our Executive Director, and been working on, again, as you guys mentioned, additional supports and services needed within the classroom. So there's a lot of things we're looking at: teacher supports, materials, best practices in instruction for gen ed and special ed. You know, we want to make sure we're, as a goal and as what we're really been concentrating on in the district is that, and something that I always say is that it's not, I think every students are general education students, but some have special needs. So we want to make sure, and I know this is just something from top down, from Dr. Rice, our board, top down, is that we're making sure there's an effort to integrate and make sure that communication's happening with general education teachers, students, special education teachers, parents, everybody together. So again, we're looking on that. Another area we're working on is social emotional needs with different trainings. And again, high quality instruction, as I stated earlier, but we're also looking at something in regards to providing more personnel. That is something we are looking at. I just want to make sure you all know that. I know you brought up those concerns, especially regarding para support, but this is something we continuing to look at. And that's why your input was so valuable when we're developing this plan, because you know your children and you know what's going on with your children. So do the teachers and administration. But as a team, we're able to come together and hopefully provide more and more support in a way. It's all surrounded about educational achievement, right? That's the goal. Is we want to make sure we want to develop students to the point where they're able to function appropriately and effectively when they're adults. So part of that is that integration of services and social emotional supports, academic and behavioral. A couple more updates. Sorry, I'm moving through these quite quick. I just wanted to go over some district community upcoming events from our SELPA. We will be hosting some upcoming items for parents that we want you to be aware of. So on February 2nd, there is a training on equipping parents to navigate IEPs. Because as we know, the IEP paperwork is becoming longer, and we have it can be very intense when you're in meetings, and we know that. So there's things out there that you can be part of to understand this process a little more, and also learn about different aspects of the IEP and get your questions answered. There's no cost for the sessions. However, online registration is required through our SELPA. It's one simple registration, and you will gain your access to whichever session you would like to attend. On February 8th, we have ways to continue to support your child's success. And on February 9th, there's Coffee Talk with Janine Murphy, who is the coordinator of Family Student in School Collaboration.
Hey, Nick.
Yes, Ms. Rubakava.
Is all this information being shared to the principals? Like, one thing is like us being accessible to the parents as, ambassadors, if they feel comfortable sharing. But is everything that special education doing for the district being disseminated to our principals? Because I think that's where it's a little backwards. Like relying on us to do it, that's backwards. It should be the district, since it's all internal, communicating to your principals, so then they're able to put them on Parent Connect and they're able to highlight this program, these offerings for our kids.
Yes. The principals are one of our first point of contacts for sure, but we do want to equip you as parents that are very knowledgeable about the special education process to have a part in that as stakeholders, right? So yes, we do provide all of this information with principals who usually distribute it out to their teachers and other school personnel and students and parents, obviously. So I understand what you're asking, and yes, we do, you know, a great. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. But I guess what I'm trying to say, I get that, like us being informed and being, you know, on this committee is because we want to be educated and informed, and also to be able to share that story, you know, through the school. But when it comes to more like a message from the special education, like the top thing you want to get out as a team, and the relying on your principals to really get that information out. Because at the end of the day, I am not the principal's boss, and I'm, you know, I'm relying on her or she to be like, hey, this is what I think, but they're still going to do what they think as a principal versus an administrator coming from the district. You know, it's different.
Yes. And I understand that. And I thank you for the input. There's a few of you more that have their hand up, but we are at the very end of our session today. Dr. Dreyer, you got 20 seconds. What do you got for us?
I was just going to suggest for like these SELPA announcements, you know, I get an announcement from Ms. Montez, like through Parent Square, that the SEDAC meeting's happening. I'm also on the CAC list, so I get a message from her. Like maybe there could be a SPED parent list. And these SELPA trainings notices can go out that way to parents. That way it is coming from the district, because I know that there are a lot of SPED parents that don't know what CAC does. They don't even know what SELPA is. And that would be, it already exists. They just need to be put in a listserv. Those notices can easily get sent out because SELPA is already sending them out.
Yes.
I get them from SELPA directly.
And I am sorry, if you want to give Dr. Dreyer, you are our PAC representative. Do you have a quick 1-minute update? And then if Kim would like to give a quick CAC update, they can do that also.
Sure, real quick. I mean, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but there hasn't really been that much. The vast majority of our last 2 meetings were about COVID, which I feel like Anne-Marie's already talked a lot about. And I know Laura kind of threw a few things in there, what the schools were doing, the district was doing. They did mention the learning recovery plan because Marcus came on a meeting and then he was supposed to come to the January meeting, which already happened, to tell us what had been approved by SELPA, but that didn't happen. And so I don't really know what's going on with that. But real quickly, I think really that's like the main point.
Okay.
There wasn't a whole lot for special education on there. We really just went over that we're going to go for a bond to fix like $90 million worth of stuff that like all these schools need for updates, Wi-Fi, things like that, just making everything efficient. And they're going to launch Peach Jar, which is another communication for parents, which is really cool. So that might make actually communications a little bit easier too. And that
Peach Jar?
Yeah, and that launched January 7th, right? So
okay. Yeah. Thank you. Ms. Cabrero, you're the last one. Real quick, if you have a CAC update. Or I'm thinking of a different, nope. You're muted.
Oh, I don't have anything different than has been said. It was a lot about COVID and distribution of test kits and things like that. So I would just be repeating what's already been said.
Thank you. And sorry, I know there's a few more that want to continue this, but we do have to end the meeting today because it is from 9 to 11. And to make sure that we're sensitive of your time, we appreciate you coming to our SEDAC, our first SEDAC meeting of the new year. So everybody have a great day and we'll be in contact. Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.